turning to a type of self-defense used by the Israeli military,
which focuses on real-world situations and how to make it out alive.
Krav Maga is about a lot more than just fighting. It's about being able to look after yourself anywhere you go. It's about standing up for others and protecting those who can't.
Militaries and security forces all over the world have adopted the Israeli method.
The reason that it's so popular is because you can see it empowers ordinary men and women to escape potentially dangerous situations very, very quickly.
Ron Engelman is a senior Krav Maga instructor in the Israeli Defense Force. He teaches close quarters fighting to soldiers on the front line.
Counter-strike, control, go!
All right, so today we have Ron Engelman, who is one of the top Krav Maga instructors in the world, pretty much a celebrity in the Krav Maga world. He's a Master Sergeant with the IDF, if I'm correct, Ron?
That's correct.
Yes. A senior Krav Maga instructor, a combat veteran of the Second Lebanese War, and has been a part of multiple counter-terrorist ops. He is the founder of KMDI Australia and a head instructor of Krav Maga Israel. Is that right, Ron?
Yes, that's correct.
So, Ron, how did you get into Krav Maga?
So I've always been training martial arts since I was a young kid. I started training in different forms of martial arts. First I started in karate, then a bit of kung fu. But I was about 10 years old when I started learning Krav Maga. I'm from Israel originally, but my family, we were living in San Diego, California at the time.
Oh.
So Krav Maga just started in America back then. This was the very early 90s, probably late 80s, early 90s. So I started training Krav Maga over there. And then when we moved back to Israel, I was about 12 then. I continued pursuing. I live, and where I grew up is right near Netanya, which is it's kind of like the birthplace of Krav Maga, because Imi Lichtenfeld, the founder of the system, when he retired from the military, he was living here in Netanya. This is where he founded his first Krav Maga gym, and a lot of the world experts in Krav Maga come originally from this city in Netanya. So it's I was very fortunate as a kid to be living over there, and that's kind of where I took my Krav Maga. When I joined the military, first of all, I wanted to be a combat soldier. I didn't want to be a teacher. So I passed selections to go into a pretty elite infantry unit. And after a few years over there, my commanders wanted me anyways to go back to be the Krav Maga instructor for the unit, because at that time, during the Second Intifada, it was quite important that the people who was teaching the combat soldiers, they wanted them to be combat soldiers themselves. They wanted them to understand what the reality of the skills in which the soldiers had to use their techniques. So me being a combat soldier, they said, look, go do the Krav Maga instructor. I said, on the one condition that I can come back and continue doing my roles as an infantry sergeant. And so when I came back to the unit, I was also Krav Maga instructor for the unit, and also a sergeant, platoon sergeant in that unit. So that's kind of my journey in terms of taking Krav Maga.
So I myself trained Krav Maga under KMG, which comes under Eyal Yanilov, who has trained under Amy. So how do you see the difference between the Krav Maga that is taught to combat soldiers and the Krav Maga that is taught to civilians? What are the main differences in the two?
Okay, that's an excellent question. It's not a simple one. I would say that anywhere you go in Krav Maga, the fundamentals are the same, or at least they should be the same. We have some basic on this assumptions. First of all, that Krav Maga, it's not a martial art. It's certainly not a combat sport. It's not designed for competition. It's designed to protect people. And the difference would be that, in boxing or in mixed martial arts, we want to know who's the best fighter, right? We're going to put two guys that are equally sized, equally matched, have the same amount of training, and we want to see who's better. Krav Maga doesn't care who's better, right? If I'm training, my sister, if I'm training my daughter to be able to protect herself against, some robber or somebody who wants to sexually assault, God forbid, I don't care. We don't want to find out who's better at fighting. That's besides the point. The assumption is that the person attacking you, they're better at fighting. That's why they chose you as a victim. Whether they want to rob you, to kidnap you, whatever, they've singled you out. Maybe they're better at fighting. Maybe they have a weapon. Maybe they've got some friends with them, but they're better than you in that situation. So the objective is in Krav Maga is utilizing the environment, using our responses, utilizing the situation, the surprise, in order to be able to survive situations that one-on-one in the ring we wouldn't survive, right? So that's maybe the, one of the basic, and that goes anywhere we go. We don't care, like when I'm training soldiers, it's not about, who's better. I want them to, if somebody comes to stab them, I want them to go home without a hole in their neck. I want them to live. I don't want them to one-on-one. The soldiers normally, also when we operate, you never operate on your own. It's not like some, Rambo movie where you drop off some, Sylvester Stallone into the Vietnam jungle by himself. That doesn't happen in the real world. So the Krav Maga, I know I'm kind of going around, but this hopefully will put together this complex. Krav Maga is not about winning. It's not about winning. I don't care about winning. MMA is about winning. Boxing is about winning. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I love, it's about winning. Anywhere you go, the martial arts generally, even traditional karate, kung fu, it's about, okay, two equally sized, matched participants, one another, and we want to have the training that's going to allow us to win. A soldier who gets stabbed, who somebody comes to stab him, or it's about blocking, defending, getting the person away from you so that your teammates can come in and help finish the job, right? So it's not really about, I don't care about you being stronger, tougher, having better technique. I want you to have the right techniques that's going to help you survive. And this is right for military, and this is right for civilian too. So that's what civilian and military Krav Maga and law enforcement, by the way, which is also different for police, they all have these things in common. There are a few other things that the assumption is that, you're always going to be outmatched by somebody bigger than you, stronger than you, that's got weapons, that got friend. We spoke about that, but also that it's going to come as a surprise. You don't choose the situation. If you're able to choose a situation, you'd choose not to be there. You'd de-escalate, you'd run away, you'd do something. And that comes with a disadvantage, because in the boxing ring, like, I've chosen to be there, right? If I'm going to grapple you, both of us say, okay, let's have this go. Krav Maga is, I don't want to engage, and now it's coming out of nowhere, I'm forced. But it comes with the other side, that the person who's attacking me is not expecting me to respond. At the very least, they're not expecting me to respond with the ferocity that I'm going to respond with. And that's where opportunity lies. So we have that. We also understand that when we're pushed to our limits, we're going to use our natural instincts and reflexes. The training, it only carries so much weight, but when you're fighting for your life, you can't even think about what techniques you want to do. You just react. So we have all these
gross motor skills.
Yeah, certainly. Lack of gross motor skills. Even just, if you speak to people who've been in a fight, like, I'm not talking about like a match, but like has really had to, fight to survive. They can't really, it's very hard to recall what happened over there. It was all automatic processes. In that is also gross motor skills, but it even goes deeper than that. It's more of, let's say, you're reactive. Now, of course, the more you train and the more you put yourself under pressure, the more accustomed you are, and maybe you can formulate some sort of game plan. But even that's limited, and that's a very different thing from walking into a competitive match, which I've gone, in the UFC at professional. They do training camps. They go into training camps for at least a month. They're going to watch videos of their opponents. They're going to analyze it with all their coaches. They're going to sit there with the grappling coach, with their striking coach, with their nutritionalist, and they're going to do everything they can to prepare. Krav Maga lives in a very different sphere. It's not to say that MMA is better, Krav Maga is better. It's just completely different things. What's the difference between military and civil? So we spoke about the similarities. What's the difference? I guess, right, outcomes and where it's going to be used. If I had to separate, I'd say in civilian, we talk about self-defense. If somebody comes to attack you or you're in a situation, you need to protect yourself. In military, self-defense wouldn't be the right, let's say, word for it. Combat, which would be more appropriate. Right. So in self-defense situation, if I hear if there's a fight, if there's a bad guy, if there are people, I'm going to walk away. Right. If you see somebody drunk, making a noise, threatening you, I turn around and I walk away. I don't want to be there. That's self-defense. We start from that. Right.
Avoid or de-escalate.
Yeah, you got to do that. I don't want to be training people in civilian context. You hear somebody noisy, drunk, and you're going to walk up to them and you're going to be the guy who's going to, put them in the place and teach them how to shut up. That's not what I do. And that's not what the people that I do to train. Yes, you need to protect your, the people that you love, your surroundings, your community, but only if you're up for it and only in a very limited, context. A soldier, when there's a threat, a soldier runs towards the gunfire, right? If somebody's shooting, you engage, you run into that. So that's different from civilian. And also, that also depends, right? Because in the military, more and more so we find our armies doing peacekeeping missions. When I was recruited back in 2000, when I was going through my basic training, the assumption was we'd be fighting Syrian commando units in the Golan Heights in trenches, conventional warfare. What we found ourselves doing is fighting guerrillas within civilian populations, which is very different. So that's one way that the military is different. Where tradition, like in World War II, right? You jump into a trench and there's a German soldier coming at you with a bayonet, right? What do? You take the bayonet and you take if you don't have anything, you fight them, you get their bayonet off you and you stab them to death because soldiers kill soldiers. That's what traditionally that's what designed. But it's not like that. It's changed the nature of warfare. It also depends where. If I'm doing a peacekeeping mission and I'm in some village and all of a sudden some 14-year-old who's maybe pumped full of drugs, because they do that, by the way. They, these evil people, they take the most fragile members of society, they indoctrinate them, they give them weapons and often drugs, and then they send them and they go kill this soldier. They're cowards. They won't attack themselves. They're going to prey on the weak people and then send them. And then as you're a soldier, what do? You've got a 14-year-old kid coming at you with a knife that can kill you, right? But you certainly don't want to kill them, not from a moral perspective, and also not from a military perspective. There's you need to survive, first of all, but the guys who are sending them, they're hoping that you kill them. They're hoping that it's on video, right? That's a win for them. So if you get killed,
out of it. They make a media video out of it.
Exactly. So if you get killed, they win. And if you kill the person coming to attack you, they also win. It's a very complex situation that we're operating. But why I'm telling you this,
I actually saw a bunch of videos where the IDF is actually being very calm against people throwing stones and stuff at them, and actually de-escalating the situation, not getting violent, despite the people being violent against them. And I think that is very important because a lot of these organizations use media warfare against Israel a lot. And it takes a lot of courage and a lot of training to be able to do that and keep that of calm against violence. So that is something really remarkable.
100%. Emi Lichtenfeld, the founder of Krav Maga, he said, be so good that you don't have to kill, right? Because if I'm very skilled and you come to attack, if I don't have any skills, almost anything can be a lethal threat, right? If you're coming to stab me and I have no training and nothing, like I have to respond with absolute force. But if I'm very well trained and maybe, you're much smaller than me, or, I was ready for the situation, or I saw it coming, it doesn't necessarily have to, I can maybe disarm you, I can take control without having, but that requires me to be very, very skilled and good. And that's the kind of military I like to serve in, right? In the IDF. So yes, on the one hand, it's, let's say the winning the war in the press, which is important, right? Israel is losing the war in the media, where it's very easy to kind of turn things around and to present it in a certain way. And it's very easy when you can make the narrative and you don't really have to rely on facts. When you can just push things forward and when you're the first, it's much easier to spread lies than to disprove the lies, right? So that's one aspect of it. But the other aspect of it is that, us soldiers serving, we're people, we have morals. I wouldn't serve in an army that, if we're getting thrown rocks at, that the easiest thing is to just open fire and kill everybody. But I wouldn't do that. And I wouldn't serve in an army that does that. So, I wish could be said the same about the people who target us, the Hamas, the people on the other side. They want to kill us. They want to kill civilians. They want to kill soldiers, and they don't care how many of people on their side die in the process. And that's a very hard enemy to fight. So where Krav Maga comes into it as well is that more and more peacekeeping. It's not always, you're not always fighting, the German soldiers in the trenches or whatnot, or the Syrian commandos in the Golan Heights. It's much more of a gray area. So while there used to be immense differences between military and civilian Krav Maga in terms of those contexts, some of those gaps are closing. But still, as a soldier, as I said, I'm operating in a team. I have my people watching my back. If somebody comes to stab me, I don't need to take them to the ground and to disarm them, right? What I actually want to do is get as much distance from them as possible, so that, if I've got friends with me with weapons and stuff, they can shoot them and they're not going to shoot me in the process. That's a very big part of, I love grappling. I love submission fighting. I love jiujitsu. From a military standpoint, the last thing I ever want to do is to grapple. And not because I'm not good at it. It's because if I'm stuck and engaged and entangled up with an enemy combative, in civilian life, it means, that their friends can come in, kick my head in, or stab me, and there's not much I can do while I'm on the ground. But in the military context, it means that if there's somebody who's a little bit not focused, or maybe there's civilians around with weapons, as happens often in the West Bank and in the territories, or if, there's other units around and they're not very skilled. So when they come to shoot the terrorists, they're probably going to shoot me as well. So that's why all of my teaching in the military is about creating distance and not engaging and not going into grappling, which is quite interesting, because I know that in the military in the United States, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is taught a lot into that. And I certainly get the value. I love Jiu-Jitsu, and I love Jiu-Jitsu because it really teaches you in a way, it teaches you how to engage physically with other people. It builds strength of character. It teaches you to lose and to learn from that and to grow. Because at the beginning, like if you're just starting out Brazilian, you're going to be submitted.
You're just getting choked non-stop.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is so good for character. It's also a great way to engage in martial arts with relatively low risk of injury. Relatively low risk. I'm saying that after 2 dislocated ribs in Jiu-Jitsu training, and a shoulder, and fingers, and but relatively lower risk. Yeah, so you certainly get injured doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but in the grand scale of things, it's different. So, but from an operative perspective, no way. And I say that from a position of love of Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, I absolutely get that. Like I love the fact that Jiu-Jitsu offers you the opportunity for non-violent dominance of a civilian situation. Like somebody's creating a mess in a bar, you just take them to a distance, choke them out, put them down, keep them there or hold them down till security arrives. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. In a combat situation, make distance, be at gun range. That's your safest bet. You do not want to get grappled into that person.
Yeah, but
yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Again, this now the police side of it, because like as a civilian, even me trained, I can't see myself, maybe as a law enforcement, maybe as a bouncer, I can't see myself restraining another civilian, because it doesn't matter if I've got the skill to do it. You never know. You don't know if you say, okay, they're not very big, or maybe, I'll catch them. They're now, let's take the extreme situation, right? They're pushing people around. They're being a public nuisance. I need to do something about them. So I'm going to jump on them behind, put them in a rear naked choke, put my hooks in, and wait until the police come around. Okay. And now they pull out a knife, or maybe they were stronger than you expected and they started. And now you're in a problem. You're in a very big problem. Let alone, you were under adrenaline, you didn't notice, you put your rear naked choke on too heavy. Now you ended up killing them by accident. Like that can certainly happen. So I always say my favorite takedown is the right cross, right? If I have to take somebody down, that's what if a situation warrants violence, then it warrants violence. Like if I have to take somebody down, jump on them, and I'm not saying never, but I don't see myself as a hero. If I see somebody being a nuisance and is drunk, I'd much first use my words, right? If I see somebody pushing around and making themselves, I'll try to de-escalate the situation. I'm not going to jump out of nowhere, pull a rear naked choke and take them down to the ground with me. That just won't happen unless we're talking about a terrorism, the London Bridge attacks or something. And then I see somebody running through the crowd, stabbing people, and then screw subduing them peacefully. I'm going to grab a chair or a brick and put them through their head. So I get the point of that yes, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is excellent for subduing people peacefully without doing too much injury for themselves. I just don't see that much application for that in a civilian context. Law enforcement, absolutely. And that kind of goes into the third accent that we spoke about, the difference between military, the applications of military and civilian. Law enforcement is now something else. In law enforcement, you have a bit of self-defense, but you also have restraining techniques. Yes. And I think that's certainly where jiu-jitsu shines. Krav Maga also has some excellent solutions for that. And Krav Maga is practiced by all of the police in Israel as well. Yeah. But there are different applications where civilian is purely self-defense, military is combat, and law enforcement is control and restraint. Yeah, if that makes sense.
That's the difference I wanted to actually get talking about, because that is where the difference comes in. Because I train Muay Thai, I train Krav Maga, and I train Jiu-Jitsu. So I see that difference on a daily basis. And when I have to use it in a situation, there are situations I realize that I can't teach a small child a Krav Maga response to a friendly banter. Like friends coming and just tugging at your collar or something. You can't go open fist to the face, hammer fist to the face and break the arm and get out.
No, absolutely not.
You have to be able to calmly just twist around, get out of the situation, put him in his place, stay away. That's where jiu-jitsu sort of comes in, judo comes in at an early level. When you're kids.
100%. I say anybody when people come to me and they say, look, I want my kids to learn martial art, or they want to learn karate, I say, okay, what do you want? So generally they want their kids not to be bullied or to be able to stand up for themselves, which is a very worthy thing. I say, fine, then your kid doesn't need to learn self-defense right now. They don't need to learn how to block a knife attack or how to disarm a gun. That's ridiculous. I'm not saying that there's not value. Okay, Krav Maga can also be trained as a martial art, right? Where it's a system. You can train many years and you're going through moves, but there's no difference really. Okay, so you're learning a gun disarm, or which I don't think should be taught to children, or you're training how to defend against a knife. But as far as I'm concerned, if you're doing that, or you're learning a kata, or if you're learning, a ground maneuver, it's all the same. There's really it's all good. What really matters is the teacher. So what I say is forget about the martial art for a second. When you're choosing a martial art for your kid, first of all, look at the teacher. Do they have the values that you want the children to get? Look at the group. Is it a group that's going to welcome your child and going to make them feel strong? Or is it a group that your child's going to feel weak? Because a child that's bullied doesn't need to learn techniques, how to stop the bullies. They need to learn confidence, how to stand up for themselves. And the techniques are secondary. It's not like, I'm not going to be able to train a small child to be, an excellent kickboxer. And let's say I did, right? Because me, as a child, I was bullied a lot. And I also knew how to fight, right? Mm-hmm. And the emotional side was the hardest part of it, right? I was bullied not because I didn't know how to, throw jab, hook, cross, low kick combination. And I could do that. And when push came to shove and I had to fight, then I'd be able to resolve it. But having the confidence to stand up for yourself and having the confidence to put the red lines and say, look, this I'm not going to tolerate, that doesn't come from learning techniques. That comes from a house that gives you confidence in yourself through your parents, through your brothers, through your sisters, through the values that you get. And also it comes from being part of a group. So if the child is feeling bullied, they're feeling isolated socially, you need to send them to not the toughest, baddest, meanest martial art gym that's going to turn them into, a trained killer, which is rubbish. You need to send them to a place that they're going to be loved and that's going to teach them how to feel strong. And I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does that excellent. Like I said, again, with the ability of learning humility, learning how to lose. And it's not the end of the day. You lose a match and, you come back and you learn from that and you become bigger. Those are so things that are important. You get that through Judo, I think is great. For the kids, I like more the grappling arts. I think that's much better than, when I was learning karate.
Absolutely. I think the same. Judo and Jiu-Jitsu work better for kids at an early level. You understand balance, you understand distance, you understand not giving into pressure.
They need the physical contact of pulling on each other and pushing, and that's much better than, let's say, traditional karate where you'll stand in a line and you'll punch and kick the air. Look, not to bag on karate, there's value to it and there's full contact, but also I'm not a big proponent of full contact sparring for people under the age of 16. You know what? Even 18, Absolutely. I wouldn't want my kids to get, it's not that people don't do that. Concussions, the brain's developing. It's not a healthy thing. I mean, I do it, I love it, but I'm aware that it's not the healthiest thing that I do in my life.
Absolutely. So I guess we are alike on the same point again. Because even I don't recommend striking for kids because your brain is still developing. If you constantly keep getting concussions, you keep getting hits on the head, you're stalling the development of this. And by the time you're 25, 26, with that many concussions, I don't think your brain is capable of much more progress after that. But anyway, that's my view. And I'm glad you also think the same. One more thing, I was hearing one of your podcasts and I loved the way you put not getting into a negative negotiation where you've already said no and the other person tries to still negotiate with you. That was a beautiful point. And this verbal art of de-escalating or avoiding a conflict is something that people just don't get. People who are very good at physical skills do not have the psychological or mental or verbal skills to understand this basic things of how to avoid a situation getting worse by using words or not putting in the wrong words and getting a wrong situation. Like what you said about saying no. And once you have said no, it's a no. You don't need to justify, you don't need to give reasons because you've already said no. And at what point does that turn into a negative negotiation for you is when you start justifying yourself in trying to be nice. And I've seen that this is a problem with people who have grown up in nice homes. You are so conditioned into being good and polite that you feel it's a wrong thing to say just no and not give a reason for it.
Wait, let's make a separation here. You got a very good point. Let's make a separation here between being nice and being polite, right? These are two different things. I think being polite is important. And I think definitely I don't want to be rude, right? But there's a difference between polite and rude and being nice or being, I'd like to be polite, but I don't have to be nice. And we know the opposite, right? I can be super polite, right? But not nice at all, right? Not to pick on anybody, but okay, English people can have a bit of a reputation. The English are known as very, very polite, but you can be polite and also be very cold, right? So let's make that distinction. I think polite can get you out of a lot of bad situations, but no obligation to be nice to somebody who's got, who you don't want to be engaged in either in a good or bad situation.
Exactly. And a lot of like violence against women especially starts with this very point. Like a person, like in India, you have acid attacks and a lot of shit happening. Like if a woman refuses, random people come up, throw acid at her face and shit like that. And so how do you say no without being offensive is also sort of an art out here, because you never know what escalates into a situation that now you cannot handle. You don't know whether you being rude to a person is triggering them into their ego, and then they go out, bring 5 friends of theirs and then attack you. You don't want that situation. So yeah, I absolutely agree. Be polite, but don't feel pressured to be nice. I absolutely get that. And that's something like you need to teach this from a very early level. These are social skills and they make a huge part of self-defense. What people do not understand, people consider self-defense to only be a physical thing, but no, it's majorly a psychological as well. And yeah, I love 100%. That Krav Maga puts de-escalation skills like right up there. It's like avoid, de-escalate, then engage and escape. It's not like the first thing is put your hands up and engage. That is one thing I absolutely love about Krav Maga. And I'm glad it has structured the syllabus that way.
Yeah, people tend to hyper focus on the physical aspect of self-defense because it's visual, because it's exciting, because it's fun. Like we focus on the physical part of we focus on fighting, right? And that's where I don't like the term so much fighting to describe what we do, because we focus on the fighting. The objective of Krav Maga is to you can choose both ways, either to avoid fights or to end them, right? We don't want to be involved in the fighting. The goal in boxing is, yes, to finish your opponent, but it's to be engaged in that fight. In Krav Maga, I want to avoid it at all costs, and if I'm there, I want to end it as quickly as possible by any means necessary. But so people focus on that, but because Krav Maga is kind of bigger than that, it's not really about fighting. Yes, we certainly fight, but that's not our objective. Our objective is to disengage. Then there's room for all these other stuff. And there are things that are really hard to teach. And it's kind of like psychology. There's no black and white. I can't just come in and I can say, well, if you do A, B, C, and D, then everything is going to be okay. Every situation is different. People are different. What I can do is I can have some, guiding principles or an understanding, but also I need to be aware that it's not going to apply in every situation. And also it changes from culture to culture. Things that in one culture are perfectly okay and might be a great way to de-escalate a situation. In another situation, it could turn it into it'd be guaranteed to turn it into a fight. So yeah, they're complex things, but I certainly agree where, okay, so in the West, let's say in Australia or in America, if we're talking about sexual assault and we're talking about women, there's definitely more room for aggressiveness in terms of saying, hey, start yelling at somebody, get away from me, you're crazy. Like that will work in some cultures. In other cultures, it could completely exacerbate the situation. In one culture, it might deter a predator, and in another culture, it might spark aggressive instincts in that person and make a situation worse. That's why I say, politeness, I really like going back to the polite model, because politeness also changes from culture to culture. right? And also within the culture, the way I act with somebody my age is going to be different from how I act with somebody much older than me, right? It changes how I act with people with the opposite sex, and so on. So politeness, within that scope of politeness, it also comes an understanding of the cultural and the social situation, and so I can certainly use that as a model. Mark McYoung, who I spoke with recently, he has an analogy which I really like. He calls them like everything that happens within like the culture, which is kind of acceptable, happens within a circle, right? The circle is acceptable behavior. It's things that, and that situation, we were actually talking about that on the recent podcast that actually just came out on Saturday, just a couple of days ago, that we were talking about. We're talking about exactly that situation, just because it's a good model, the phone number, right? And what they'll do is the predator will kind of be right on the border of that circle. They won't come all the way out, because the moment they come all the way out, they expose themselves as a predator, right? So they'll kind of sit on the line to check you out, right? Some people call it the interview process. Well, the person who wants to assault you will come in and, let's say even if it's a mugging, they'll come in and they'll ask, do you have any change? Can you help me out? Or, what's the time?
Engaging you.
Yeah, they're engaging you, but they're still in the circle. They haven't stepped out, right? And you know that something is wrong, right? Because you have these natural instincts that tell you that it's not right, but they haven't stepped out of the circle, so it doesn't allow you yet to engage. Like, okay, so you're a trained martial artist. If they came at you with a knife, you know exactly what to do, because that's way out of the circle. But right now, they haven't done anything. They're just a potential threat, but they haven't done anything that warrants a violent response, which is also out of the circle, right? So, like, if you come at me out of the circle and you go, whatever, you say, hey, give me your wallet, or get into the car, I'm going to shoot you. I go, fine, I know how to get out of the circle. I'm happy there too. I live there, no problem. Let's go. Okay. But when we're kind of in the border, you're kind of testing me out. Okay. And you go, okay, so back to can I have your phone number? And I go, no, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't give my phone number out to strangers. Right? This is polite. I could just say the impolite version is no, get away from me. Right? And that certainly sets the boundary. Okay. I can set the boundary of no, I don't give my phone number to strangers. Nothing about you. This is me, a policy within me. Okay. And that's why it's a bit gray. Okay. And then he starts, yeah, but I'm not a stranger. I'm a nice guy. And that's where I don't get engaged with the negotiation. I say, look, I'm sorry, I don't give my phone number out to strangers. Leave me alone now. I can even escalate that, right? What does that do? I'm very careful about, like, I'm kind of stepping out of the circle. I'm being a little bit impolite now, but just very briefly, I'm saying, and then we see where we go. And then if they want to go all the way up and they say, hey, you give me your phone number right now, we say, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to call the cops, help somebody. Like, I can choose to play that game with you. It's very, let's say, it's not that black and white, and takes some social skills, but I'll tell you what it also takes. It takes confidence. And in order for me to be able to step out there, I need to have something backing it up. And that's where the training goes. That's where the confidence goes. You come to me and you go, step outside right now. We're going to fight. Right? So I can come to you and I can say, look, please, I don't want to fight you. I didn't mean to, leave me alone. Right? I'm begging you. I'm showing myself weak. Okay. By the way, this fighting thing, it's borderline, because like fighting can also sometimes, we can fight within the circle too. Sometimes there is some socially tolerated, for two men to fight, right? Not between a man and a woman, not between a man and a child, right? But between two men, full of testosterone, sometimes they can fight within the circle. I'm not saying that it's okay. I'm not saying that it's right. Bad things can happen, but that's still socially acceptable. So I can either say, look, I don't want to fight you. Or I can kind of change my way and say, it's not that I don't want to. It's like, I'd rather not, right? say, step outside, I want to fight you. Say, you know what? I'm not going to fight anybody today. Right? Or I have another one, Mark, said you take off your glasses and you put them in your pocket, right? And they say, why are you taking off your glasses? Well, because I don't want to break them, right? It's like, I'm ready to go, I'll fight you, I just don't want to. So it's kind of like establishing these red lines of boundary. It's complicated, it's a dance, and it really changes, and it takes, but I guess the number one thing I can give is, one, be polite, but be assertive, right? There's a difference between being assertive and being aggressive, right? I don't want to be aggressive, I want to be assertive. But in order for me to be assertive and to be able to put down some red lines, then I need to be able to at least appear that I can enforce them. And I need to feel that way, right? Otherwise, I'm just begging you not to make me a victim. And so yes, training is important. It comes in. You can't isolate one from the other, but it's not everything, because you can know how to fight the best, but if you don't have any social skills and any social abilities, one side of the equation is that you end up in jail because you killed somebody that you didn't have to kill.
Yeah.
And the other side of the equation is maybe, you beat up somebody that you shouldn't have beat up, and then they come with their cousins, or in Israel, maybe in India, say I think they'll come with their cousins.
Yeah, they come with the whole gang.
Yeah. In America, they'll come with a gun. So
yeah,
it's doesn't end up well anywhere. So social skills are certainly part of that, and you got to have those.
Pick your fights wisely.
Sorry, what's that?
I said we need to pick our fights wisely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, what fight are you getting into, and what is it worth? Is it worth getting into that fight? If not, just de-escalate the situation, get out, be safe.
Yeah, I always try to say I don't deal in fighting, I deal with assault, right? I like that word. I think words are really important because it really helps clarify the concept and what I'm doing here. Assault is unavoidable, right? I didn't choose to be there. A fight is we both chose to be there, right? Even it can be like a street fight is still a fight, right? I took your car spot. You came out, you shouted at me. I chose to come out and shout back at you, and we start pushing each other. We both chose to be there. We both chose to engage. This is a choice, right? A granny who's walking the street or the shopping, and somebody comes in and starts attacking her. That's assault. She didn't choose to be there, right? And it goes to the context, right? Terrorism, like that's assault. That's very clear cut. And it should also be very clear cut for us. I defend myself against assault, and in order to defend myself against assault, I'm not going to fight you. I don't care about fighting. If you assault me, I'm going to assault you back. And that has a different
That's a very
meaning.
good point. That's a very good point, because even I had made this point to a person in a discussion. It's like a war is a fight. Terrorism is assault. Like, you're not asking, you're not agreeing to, like, okay, we are going to have a war. These are the demarcations. Now we fight. That's a fight. That's war. Assault is terrorism. You're not ready. It's a civilian population going in. Suddenly rockets come in. That's assault. You're not agreed to this fight. And then you have the right to retaliate, and retaliate with full force if needed. So,
that's a valid distinction.
So another thing that has like sort of devalued Krav Maga today in like the world perspective is actually the fact that a lot of people just do like random 15-day courses and become instructors. Right? A lot of people are just selling instructor certificates for money. And then these guys start up classes without any prior experience, without years of training. And then everybody watches their students do stupid shit, not being able to even throw a jab cross correctly. And that just ruins the name of Krav Maga as a skill for everyone in the mass market. Like, everybody starts saying like, oh, this is stupid. Like, this is not going to work in a real fight. So how do you deal with that? Is there a way that we can tackle the way Krav Maga instructor certifications are given out to people?
Look, it is something that I've spent considerable amount of time thinking about. I'd certainly say that it's not a unique phenomenon to Krav Maga. I think that it's common in the martial arts, very common, and
lots of frauds in martial arts.
And I think in many things, not just in look, martial arts are something that's generally, it's like the teaching of martial arts and of combat sports and of self-defense. These are things that are non-regulated, right? You said like somebody doing a 15-day course, right? I've seen people just, without a day of Krav Maga training, just after watching a few videos of reading a few books, pronouncing themselves Krav Maga instructors, master of their own Krav Maga system, and this happens all throughout the martial arts. I'm not sure that's something that can be combated. I'm not sure it's something that shouldn't. I've seen, and I've been down the roads where people go around, and I've seen instructors going, his Krav Maga is bullshit, and this guy's a fraud, and this guy's a fake, and this guy, and it's usually these are the people with a chip over their shoulder. They need to prove something, right? They want to show only my Krav Maga is the real Krav Maga, and everybody else is bullshit. And what are you teaching that? You're going to get people killed. Like, I don't really relate to that. I don't really connect to that. First of all, like, yeah, I've been doing this my whole life, and yes, I've been, training in the military, and yes, but honestly, like, the more you know, the more you become humble, the more you know that there's so much more to know about this world of violence. So, like, what do I know? Who am I to come and say, this is bullshit, that's bullshit? Like, so I'm not so quick to judge, right? Just from being around for so long, you develop humility. Right, you get that naturally in some things, like for example, in jiujitsu and stuff. Like, doesn't matter. You could be the best, black belt in the world, and like people are going to submit you, right? And especially, learning, you get submitted and stuff. You don't walk around going, I'm the best and everybody else is bullshit. But because Brazilian jiu-jitsu has the competitive element, is very much based on competitive, that kind of serves to keep it in line, more or less. Same thing with boxing, right? But okay, let me turn the question around, right? Okay, so we have boxing, right? Excellent combat sport, very tough sport, hard conditioning wise, hard mentally. You got to be a tough guy if you want to compete. Okay, and then we have cardio boxing and cardio kickboxing. Okay, because we have cardio kickboxing, does that make kickboxing bullshit? Does that make Muay Thai crap? No, absolutely not. Okay, does that mean that cardio kickboxing is bullshit? No, it's not bullshit. It's just something else. It'll keep you fit. It's fun. It'll teach you body mechanics, movement. Is it the best form of self-defense? No, absolutely not. Is it better than sitting on the couch? Yeah, absolutely. It is. Yeah. So I know I'm being overly diplomatic, but I generally feel this way. I'm not quick to judge, and at the end of the day, if you're giving people this, the confidence and getting people engaging, at least getting people to think about it, then you're doing something good, okay? And maybe after they train for a few months with you, and then they see, okay, this isn't really getting the results that I want, then maybe that's their first step into now going and finding another Krav Maga instructor. Or, you know what? I've been around and I've seen, I've had students who, after yellow belt go, I'm an expert, I know everything. And then they go and get certified somewhere else. And, some global organizations have a little bit more requirements for standards for people who join, and some less. And I've had people come in and go, look, I want to be a Krav Maga instructor. And I go, excellent. Come Monday, beginner's class. Let's start training. We'll get you there. It might take 5-10 years. But I'll make you an instructor. I'll make you an excellent instructor. And they go, yeah, but, I'm looking for something a little bit faster. I go, look, I don't do fast. Come start training. You'll love it. And you'll go forward. Like, who's to say that you're even going to like Krav Maga? You've only just started. Maybe after a month, you'll say, this is bullshit. Now I'm going to do ninjutsu. Like, who knows? Try it for a bit. Okay. And I've had some of these people. Okay. I had a student also came for a little bit. And then after about 2 months, 3 months, that's it. You couldn't commit with it. And then, some other, this was when I was living in Australia, by the way. Some other, organization came to town, certification courses, no experience necessary. And they went and they did that course, and I'm looking at it like, couldn't even believe how they accepted them, because I saw like the person couldn't strike. They became a Krav Maga instructor, and they were bad. They were really bad. But you know what? 5 years down the track, 10 years down the track, they became decent, right? Because they've been doing it for long enough. And then after that, they went to another organization, got a bit of more training and stuff. So I'm not quick to judge. I'm not that quick to judge. And I've also been around long enough that even I know that if people, sometimes they're looking for a shortcut, or sometimes they don't have the best training going in, people do get better if they stick with it. So I guess that's why I'm not such in a hurry. Yes, a lot of my colleagues will go around and you know, they go, his Krav Maga is bullshit, and his Krav Maga is bullshit, and he's a fraud, and he's a fake, but I don't think that does them any good, because all the students are hearing is, you know, they're not hearing his Krav Maga is bullshit and here's Krav Maga is bullshit. All they're hearing is Krav Maga is bullshit, Krav Maga is bullshit, and Krav Maga is bullshit. And then when you turn around going, well, I'm the real deal, they don't hear that anymore, right? So I don't think you're doing yourself a service. I don't think you're doing your students a service when you walk around going, well, you know, I'm going to save you because what they're going to teach you is going to get you killed. Like, yeah, you know everything, right? And also, I don't think it's a very fun way to live, right? I don't think it's a very, very fun way to be, where you're, you know, just angry and, you know, and have to criticize and hate everybody. Like, if you're confident, again, if you're confident in who you are and what it is you're doing, if the guy next to you is doing something that's not great or even very poor, so what? Help them out, you know, instead of putting a video online saying, you know, this guy's bullshit, he's an idiot. Like, no, like, you know, maybe reach out and say, hey, would you like to do some training together? Would, like, if you're generally interested, like, honestly, me, often I can't be like, if you want to come to me, like, I'll train you and I'll help you, but I'm not going to go out of my way and going, you know, you bullshit, let me help you. Like, they need to do their own journey. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think that we need to be calling out, you know, everybody who's Krav Maga is not great. I don't like to use the word fake or fraud. Yes, there's something ingenuine about going out there and, you know, watching some videos on YouTube and calling yourself a Krav Maga instructor, and that certainly happens. But I think that's the minority. I think generally the majority of the Krav Maga instructors out there, even the ones who aren't very good, they believe, in their mind, they believe that they're doing the right thing and they want to do the best for their students. They're not just out there to kind of rip off their students. Maybe I'm innocent. I don't think I am. Maybe I'm, but I think people generally want good for other people, and it's not just about, you know, about making money. And if it is, people are smart. People see through that fairly quickly.
Okay, so a lot of Krav Maga schools do not have like practice against resisting opponents. You are most of the time training with cooperative opponents, right? And for a long time, it's like 1, 2, 3 years, they've just been training against cooperating opponents. So their level of reaction to actual stress or resistance is really, really bad when it actually happens. So what do you see as a fix to that?
Okay, so it's definitely a challenge in Krav Maga, right? Because on the one hand, I need to give you techniques, I need to give you tools to protect yourself. Again, going into the sport fighting, like boxing, like jiujitsu, you know, I train to box, I put on gloves, you know, I train to win matches, and then I can go in and I can actually carry out my training in this scenario that it was built for safely. Right? In both, same thing, jiu-jitsu. I learned to submit. I learned to choke out people. I learned to win rounds on points if you're training at a highly competitive school. And then the school that I train with in Israel is a very, very competition-orientated school, right? Multiple world championships I'm talking about. Like, and Israel is a tiny country, right? And European championship, like every time there's a European championship, like these guys every year fly out overseas. Every single month there's a delegation from the school, like very, very focused on competition, which is fantastic.
What are you in jiu-jitsu, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I've been off and on with all these cracked ribs and things. I've been doing jiu-jitsu off and on for about maybe even 10 years, but I haven't even progressed with all the moving back and forth. I'm a white belt, and I'm happy that way, and I'll be happy. It's a white belt for me, a white belt mentality, right? Every day I come onto the mat, and I'm there. I enjoy the process. I enjoy learning, and I always want to be taught. I've trained with people, with friends. I've got a lot of friends who are black belts, and and they come and they're like, I'm like, I want to do some jiu-jitsu. And they're like, yeah, I'll show you moves that are going to be good for your Krav Maga, and they're going to be applicable for the street. And I go, stop right there. You completely misunderstood me. Okay. I like jiu-jitsu. I want to learn jiu-jitsu as jiu-jitsu is taught. Don't teach
learn
me
jiu-jitsu for jiu-jitsu, learn Muay Thai for Muay Thai, and learn Krav Maga for Krav Maga.
Don't teach me jiu-jitsu for what you think Krav Maga fighter for what you don't know Krav Maga. You don't train Krav Maga. Don't teach me jiu-jitsu for Krav Maga because you don't know. You know jiu-jitsu. Teach me jiu-jitsu for jiu-jitsu people. And so where we were going with this is that I can never do that to you in Krav Maga. I can never say, you know what, I've been teaching you some knife defenses. Now let's take you into a really bad neighborhood and we're going to go pick fights with people who hopefully have knives, and let's see if you survive some knife attacks, right? We don't get to do that in Krav Maga. So that's a challenge because it leaves a lot of gray areas. So I train on my techniques, right? I train on, the best way to block. So we've got the techniques. We have techniques in judo. We have techniques in jiu-jitsu. We have techniques in boxing. We have these techniques. But then their application in real life scenario makes challenging. So first of all, you need to have some sort of skill level. Because if I get, if you're day one in the class and I get you to fight, full force against somebody who's got a knife, even a rubber knife, right? Sometimes we use tasers, which are fun. That'll get a response. Yeah. So we need to have some level of ability to be able to attack, and more important, to be able to block and to defend itself. So it's not just wild and we don't injure each other, right? Same thing. I mean, if you walked up into my class day one, I wouldn't put on boxing gloves and go, there we go, boxing, full contact boxing, let's go. Before you learn how to protect your face, there's no point. You're not going to learn anything. You're just going to get hurt, right? So the same thing with my Krav Maga. I need to teach you the techniques. I need to teach the movements. I need your body to be able to move. I need you to have some skills before I can throw you into the deep end. Now, you're right. The problem is some people never go there. Some people never go to the, full-on warfare. Like when I go with my advanced students and my instructors and the people I train, it's like, okay, we've now been working on techniques. Now let's put it into practice. You have a knife, okay? Your objective, forget about what he's doing. I want you to put as many holes in him as possible. If you don't put 15 holes in him, okay, then you're going to do 100 burpees before the class is over, okay? Let's give you some motivation to kill him, right? And the other side, I say, try to get as few holes into your body as possible. Let's see where this ends up. And that's critical in Krav Maga. We got to have that. We got to have one against the other. Otherwise, we're cooperating. Often we're cooperating when we don't even know that we're cooperating, right? Because if we're training long enough, you're coming at me with a knife attack and you preempt, what technique I'm going to do, and some place in your brain you want me to succeed if you're not a psychopath, right? Or if you don't, you generally want your training partners to succeed, unless we're training one against another. And it's hard to create those situations, but as a coach, we have to work that way. Now, there are other ways to do that too, by the way, because in my instructors and everybody that I teach, besides the Krav Maga and the self-defense, we do full contact sparring, we do submission grappling, we do all those points, but there's a room for them. And what's the purpose of that? Because I just told you that in a self-defense situation, or if you've been training, the last thing you want to do is try to put somebody in a chokehold or an armbar or an Americana, or like, you don't want to do those things. But why do we go in there? Because why do we do full contact boxing, let's say? We're in the street, the last thing I'm going to do is jab, 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 set you up for a jab cross, hook, liver combination. Like, I'm not going to fight that way. So why do I do that in training? Because it's a tool, okay? All these things are formed to teach my students to face full force, right?
Fight under pressure.
Yeah. because I want them to have the technique and to have the ability to do that, but I also want them to train to meet full force. Because what often happens is people are training on the techniques, but they've never met full force. They don't even know what it is, right? So the first time they meet that, everything goes to shit. But if they have the technique and also they've met full force in training against rubber weapons, but also through boxing and through jiu-jitsu and through all these things, it makes their skill set much better. And what you should be taking out from what I just said is, to be a good practitioner in Krav Maga, do you need to be good at boxing? No. Do you need to be good at submission fighting, at jiu-jitsu? No. You don't need to be good at that. But you need to be experienced in full force fighting. So you don't need to be a good boxer. You just need to have done it enough times that you got the benefit out of it, that you know that you've been hit enough times with full force and you go, you know what? I can keep on fighting. I'm used to this.
Doesn't hurt so much,
or that you can hit somebody. You need to have enough grappling skills that when somebody puts you down onto the ground, you don't just freeze or you don't know what you're doing. No, you shouldn't, pull a sweep and into an armbar. No. You should go crazy. You should start kicking, thrashing around, biting, throwing off them. Don't let them get on top of you. Not through technical stuff, but just through going wild. But in order to do that, you need to be comfortable on the ground. So that, or not comfortable. I don't want you comfortable on the ground. I want you uncomfortable on the ground. I want that the moment you get on the ground, you go up. Because one of my problems when I train skilled jiu-jitsu practitioners, the moment they hit on the ground, what do you do in jiu-jitsu? The moment you get on the ground, you relax.
Full guard.
You relax. You relax. You relax. Maybe you put them in your guard. Maybe you find the position, right? You have to see where your opponent is. And then what are you going to do? You're going to start testing their weaknesses, right? You push a hand here, you bridge them over there. You want to see how they're going to react, right? You find the opening. And then when you find the opening, boom, you attack, right? And then again, you get into position and then you relax again and you find the position. So it's all about positions in jiu-jitsu. My limited understanding of jiu-jitsu, it's, you find the position in between. You can't be going full on aggressive. You're going to guess. And that's what all beginners do, right? When you start jiu-jitsu at the beginning, you're going to be going as hard as you can. Same thing boxing, right? You're going to be going full. And anybody who's experienced in the boxing ring, sure, you want to go crazy? No problem. I'm going to cover up. You've got about exactly 30 seconds in your gas tank. If you're going wild, right? Have fun. Go. 30 seconds, I can block, I can move, I can slip. And after those 30 seconds are over and you can't breathe and you can't keep your hands up, even if you're incredibly fit, that's when I start to have my fun, right? Same thing in jiu-jitsu, right? If I'm with an absolute beginner, right? And we start and it go. And I like, in 1 second, they're wild. It's like a raging bull, right? They're thrashing and going around. No worries. I'm not going to play your game. I'm not going to start thrashing with you, right? I'm going to wait. I'll control. I'll find a position. I'll let you thrash around as much as you want, right? And then the moment you start getting tired, now I'm going to go to work. That's nice. Not in self-defense, right? I don't have the luxury to wait you out because every second that passes could be the end, right? And there's a difference between having my guard up in boxing and you going wild and stuff. And now when we're bare knuckles, right? Any single punch can end it right there, can put me on my ass. And then, or, any second you can pull out a knife, right? So I'm not going to jab, cross, maneuver, move, watch a little bit, and then put a game plan. And on the ground, I'm not going to kind of relax and, kind of see who I'm up against and then start to work. I'm going to be that raging bull, but I'm going to be that raging bull with technique and with experience.
Yeah.
And that's maybe actually
something... end up on the ground in the street fight.
Yeah, but that's actually something that I can say against these two things that I love so much, boxing and jiu-jitsu, is it trains us to a lot of benefits. But the style of fighting, it trains us to kind of win matches and to relax. And it's important to relax, but it can train us to be a little bit too complacent. And I don't want that in Krav Maga. When I want to go down to the ground, I don't want to relax. I want to go wild because I know how bad the situation is, how dangerous it for me. Any second, another friend of yours can come in and kick my head in. So it's not just about knowing technically how to get up, but it's about when you hit the ground, you should be panicking. You should be panicking in a controlled way, and in a educated way, but you should be panicking. The moment somebody's throwing punches at you, you should be panicking. Again, not a controlled panic. You should be at 100. You shouldn't be at 50%.
Should let your adrenaline shoot up, but not let it affect your thinking, basically.
Yeah, when I was speaking with Rory Miller, who's worked a lot in prisons, said generally the way that somebody who the attacks go down, especially stabbings and things like that, is they're going to hit you so fast that you never catch up. You don't even know what's coming, right? You were there minding your own business in the yard. They jumped and they started stabbing in the liver, not once, like pa 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 pa,
and they're out.
And the moment you realize that they're stabbing in the liver, and you try to respond, they're already at your neck. And the moment you realize that you're at neck, you're on the ground. Like they're so fast that you never even catch up. And that's how you beat a skilled opponent. And that's how skill doesn't come into the mix. So there are all these martial arts walking around going, well, I know how to fight. I could protect myself. The bad guys, the criminals, they're not fighting, right? They're not going in there for a fight. And if you go in there with a fighter's mentality, like in boxing and jiu-jitsu, you're going to lose because they're playing a different game. You might be better at them, but that takes us full circle. I said Krav Maga is not about finding out who's better. I don't care about who's better. Often I have to catch up the ground, right? Because you know we're about to go, because you planned this out. Maybe you ambushed me, right? You knew where this was going. I was trying to de-escalate. But by the time I realized that this is going, I have a lot of ground to catch. Because you, like, imagine, this isn't always the case, but imagine a scenario where there's this guy, you know, waiting to ambush you around the corner. They're waiting. They've seen you coming. They're hiding. Maybe it's a terrorist. Maybe it's, you know, just some guy who wants to jump you, beat you up, and take your wallet, whatever. But they're waiting. They know that they're about to fight. So they're at 100. Their adrenaline is going. They know that it's about to go down. And there you are minding your own business. Maybe even you're on your cell phone, right, with your head, and you're at zero. You're at zero. And they hit you at 100 miles per hour. And now you have to catch up. Right? You have to catch up to that 100 miles an hour. Maybe you have the best car in the world, but you still have to make that ground. Right? So that's kind of like what we want to be in Krav Maga. We want to have the techniques, but we need to be also race cars. We need to go from 0 to 100 as fast as possible, because the other person, maybe they're driving Toyota Corolla from 2003. But that Toyota Corolla is already doing 100 miles an hour and you're at 0. So you better have some Tesla or whatever that can close it up very, very fast. Otherwise, it doesn't matter if your car is better than them. They're going faster than you, and you'll never win it. And I hope it's clear that my analogy, it's not just about speed. It's about ferocity. It's about aggression. It's about all these things.
Okay. So the final question for today is basically, if I have to take my Krav Maga that I learned in a class and I want to improve it to a level that it is real world ready, what are the changes I need to make to my training, or what are the things I need to add into my Krav Maga training to make it really, really world ready, real world ready, basically?
Okay, it's an excellent question. There's no simple answer to it, but I would say that we need to put in drills that's going to simulate the force and aggression of a real situation. So the techniques are important, but the techniques are only a small part of it. Like maybe your techniques aren't excellent, but if you have the experience of dealing with that, like even a bad technique executed well and the right timing and aggressively is better than the best technique that's executed poorly. I'm sure that there's some saying over there that I missed, right? Something about a well-formulated plan executed poorly is something I remember. I'm sure one of the generals, maybe McCarthy, one of the generals from World War II, whatever. Okay, so what should we be doing? We should be training against resistance, against an aggressive attacker, and trying to create a situation where one side is the attacker is trying to beat you. In order to do that, there's no shortcuts. You need to be skilled so that you can avoid injury, and you could avoid injuring your partner. Because, I mean, if I had my way, day one, I'd say, "Are you coming to train with me? Good. I give your friend a knife. I give you nothing. And I say, close your eyes or walk around the gym. Don't mind us." And I'll tell your friend, not a friend. No, I wouldn't take your friend. I'd bring your worst enemy, right? Somebody who hates you, right? And I give him a knife and I say, "Here's your chance," right? Hurt them as bad as you can. And I'll get you to walk around. I say, maybe somebody's going to attack you, maybe not. Good luck, right? And we'll do that a couple of times, and we'll get you to get even with one another back and forth. Yeah, I mean, in the perfect world, that's probably going to end up best case scenario with a couple of missing teeth and a dislocated shoulder and, maybe a torn meniscus or God knows what. So we need to have good training, that you know how to protect yourself, you know how to hold your body, your training partner knows how to, how to go full force without injuring your partner. We have the applicable protective equipment, and we also have an instructor, and this is maybe the most important thing. You have an instructor who's very skilled and experienced and knows how to build those situations and how to put you in situations that are going to challenge you, but are not going to put you in a situation that's unsafe, right? Going to be able to build. So maybe there is no solution. I would, okay, if you're listening to this podcast, I do not recommend that you grab your training partner and you just go, let's just go for it and see what happens, right? No, you need safe instruction. You need somebody who can watch over and can also, stop it. Maybe you don't see what's happening, right? That's why we have, referees in the UFC, right? They're there to stop the fight. They know, they can sense when it's about to go too far and we're risking injury or death, right? So no, please don't do that with your friend. But as a coach, that's what you want to be building up, okay? And yeah, full contact sparring is a great way to do that safely. That's boxing. That's exactly what it was designed to do, to put two people that can punch each other, but the risk of injury is relatively low. Jiu-jitsu on the ground, they're good for that, but we shouldn't get too preoccupied in those, because that's not really the way we box, is not the way that we fight, that we face assault. Right. So yeah, facing that, like one of the things we did, like I said, as instructors, we've brought tasers in when we wanted to do knife defenses, right? When somebody comes at you with the rubber knife, when you train against a rubber knife, if you've been doing it long enough, it's not really scary. It's like, fine, rubber knife, whatever. Like, he's coming at me, I've got my technique, I can deal with it. And even if I get stabbed, the consequences are not so bad. And even if the knife grazes my arm, okay, so what? Okay, but then when I put a taser in your partner's hand, it's going crack, 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 crack. That's scary shit. Right? Yeah. It's a relatively safe way. And now you don't just block and just go block, and completely ignore the knife. Like, now you're hyper focused on what's happening over there. So all kinds of tricks, but that's really the job of the Krav Maga instructor, is to be able to put together a full picture, because I'll never be able to do what jiu-jitsu does, because jiu-jitsu is not really about facing violence. I'll never be able to put you in a competition match, because there's no competition Krav Maga, right? In jiu-jitsu, I'll teach you grappling, I'll teach you arm bars, I'll teach you headlock. And I know a lot of very good jiu-jitsu coaches, and the better they are and the more they've been around, they'll tell you, yeah, but this is not self-defense. Like, I know that I'm teaching you competitive jiu-jitsu. Yes, there's certainly aspects here that are good, but this is not self-defense, and don't get confused. And same thing, a good boxing coach will tell you, I'm teaching you boxing. And same thing, I'm teaching you Krav Maga. I'm not teaching you MMA. I don't know MMA. I'm not professional MMA fights. I have zero MMA bouts. Yes, I know how to kick. I know how to punch really well. I'm very experienced in that. I know how to grapple well. But I'm none of these things. I'm a Krav Maga instructor. I'm a self-defense instructor. I'm an expert at that. So yes, we have all these things, but we can take the boxing as as a drill. That's all it is. It's a way to get better at it. But it's not everything, because in Krav Maga, we need to face against knives. We need to face against sticks. We need to face against multiple attackers. We need to face against people trying to kick our head in when we're on the ground. We need to have all these things, but we can take these ideas from, these systems from boxing and from jiu-jitsu and then put it in. What I'll do in a classical, let's say, ground class is, okay, maybe we'll do some more typical techniques that are, we'll teach some techniques, and then maybe we'll do some submission fighting, fine. And then I'll say, okay, now I'm going to throw a knife on the ground, right? And whoever gets the knife, just start stabbing your opponent, making a hole. And all of a sudden, everything changes, right? They were going, okay, whoever felt really confident on the grappling, and they were submitting everybody, and now everybody, they go, everything, all the techniques that I've been doing up until now in my class, none of this applies, or I need to completely change. Some things applied, like some of the positions are right, but what was maybe the best position for a submission now becomes the worst possible position when when facing against an opponent with a knife. Right. Yeah. So that's our job as Krav Maga, always to pull the picture with the best tools that we have, and always to challenge, and always to put our students and also ourselves going, okay, what are we missing? I feel really good with this, so there's something wrong, right? We should never feel confident or comfortable. Confident, yes, but never comfortable with our skills. Should always go, okay, this seems right. What can I do to completely ruin this, right? What can I do to completely mess it up? And then when I go there, I become better, right?
Perfect. All right, Ron. It was amazing talking to you. People on Instagram can follow Ron at Ron Engelman. I'll add all the links to his website, to his Instagram down in YouTube. And as it was for me, myself. And once again, thank you so much, Ron, for sharing your time and your wisdom with all of us. And I hope to see you in Israel someday soon. Hopefully next year or the next after that, right?
We're here. Thank you so much for having me on. You ask excellent questions, and I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you, Rod. Take care and see ya.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.